Okay, so we watched Alien Earth on its premiere, and there are many things to discuss. Let's jump to it.
Welcome to First Takes, where we talk and sometimes complain about filmmaking. Hope you enjoy the ride and don't forget to subscribe. Let's begin.
Alien has been the most important franchise in terms of stories that influenced pop culture, the horror genre, and science fiction all combined into one. We can say that there are three very vague stages of its history. So there's the original ones that are still very relevant for today's pop culture. Then later, Ridley Scott's attempt to expand its mythology with Prometheus and the modern movies that came after that. And then a new era that is reflected in last year's Alien Romulus. And of course, this series. So the promise for Alien Earth is gigantic. It brings up the promise of finally seeing how this danger found in space by several passengers throughout time, well, arrives to Earth. So with two chapters, still we have a lot of questions, so let's see what we can deduce from it. The first chapter tries to mix a vintage vibe for the first few minutes, showing the already archetypical crew of passengers under a mission that, well, goes terribly wrong. While they do that, there is an even longer introduction to some players of this whole plot in Marcy, or Wendy, a girl turned adult who is part of a race of humanity's companies to gain power and advantage over the others. Visually and philosophically, the first chapter does a clear message. There is representation through the already common murders of people and its gory nature that regular human beings in this world are just destined to die like bugs, and that is one of the several ongoing plots installed on the first chapter. Then there is an attempt to bring a theoretical and philosophical challenge regarding what makes us human, valuable, and how our feelings can be very much real, or rather insignificant to technology and progress. And yeah, the topics are delightful to people who really understand it or think it's interesting, or people who like to discuss these issues in their daily lives. But at this point, I'm not sure that it's for regular audiences. Actually, after the first hours of the show, I saw that there was a lot of appraisal over the critic side, but audiences may be finding confusion over how these plots are developing. So, 79% over Rotten Tomatoes versus 93% or 94%, it's a lot of difference. And well, the second chapter has a big challenge to fulfill since there comes a pop side of the story taking over. There's a main character who has her brain implanted over an already adult body, which is kind of difficult to understand at first, goes to save her older brother from death. And the ship we saw during the first minutes of the first chapter with a lot of passengers and all of them like enjoying as the first installment of this story crashes over Earth finally, as we all expected for many years. And yep, the ship is full with creatures and monsters, and all of them are basically killed and massacred in seconds. Then there's soldiers and people who try to see what happened, and of course are also killed. And there is a lot of world building that makes you get invested in how the political landscape works. As of now, basically it describes how these technology companies have taken over the political structures, and there is a geopolitical way of doing things that corresponds to this. And if there is already content related to how this worked before in any of the stories, I'm sorry, I just didn't know about it. But it felt interesting, at least from what they've shown. There are some concerns on things, on dialogues and how they work, and I'm not sure if I should be worried for real. They seem sometimes a little flamboyant, and I don't truly believe some characters and how they behave. But let's not forget that this aims to be a harder sci-fi way. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are types of contents that seem to be difficult to manage for this story. I mean, with movies, the type of content that you show on series weren't there. Like, there were holes in the story, of course, because everyone was in space all the time, in enclosed areas, and now they need to fill that hole not only like in spaces but in information. And the tone sometimes is confusing to understand. There's not just a simple purpose of things, there's a lot of background everywhere, even like flashbacks. But still, as I said with the dialogues, I think that with time and with more episodes, we could start getting the vibe of the tone that it offers. All in all, I do feel involved with some characters and the way things develop, but I still feel that there are some things that feel not very approachable, and it feels the fact that here it is clear to see that humans are not going to be the main characters, they're always the weaklings. If that is good, bad, or most importantly, interesting for regular audiences or for the attributes of the story, well, we have to find out throughout each episode. So, what do you think about Alien Earth? Let us know in the comment section. See you around.